Hi, I'm George Yancey, Dr. George Yancey. Let's share some paradigms. The paradigm I want to share today concerns academia and Trump. You may or may not have realized that since the election of Trump, there has been a certain amount of concern by academics, rightfully so, about some of the things that Trump is doing and his approach. For example, Harvard appears to be his big target right now. But those of us who don't go to Harvard, who don't work at Harvard, can't be complacent to think that it couldn't happen at our university. Harvard, he's trying to take away federal funding, grants. He's trying to prevent international students from coming there. There's a lot of reasons for academics to be concerned about what Trump is doing, especially if he expands this out to other colleges. And some have been very concerned that this is an attempt to take over academia by Trump. Now, why do I want to talk about this? As part of my journey in academia, I have become a critic of how academics has been done. You may or may not have seen my video on Christianophobia in academia. I'm concerned about that, but just generally speaking, that academics is not this honest search for truth. Rather, academics has turned into, unfortunately, a politicized tool for people with certain perspectives, most likely on the left, a certain humanistic type of perspective as well. This has been troubling to me. So I'm far from the most prominent one, but I have been an academic who has criticized the way academia is done. And there's a group of us. And what happens is that we tend to communicate with each other through emails, through our articles. We know each other. And so when Trump came onto the scene doing what he's done, I had access to sort of insider perspectives. Furthermore, I just came back from a conference last week that really dealt with civil discourse. In part, it was aimed at some of the problems many of us have had with academia. But naturally, we also discuss what Trump is doing. So I want to try to give you a laydown, if you will, a perspective of what some of us who have been critics of academia have said and how we feel about these new developments. So first thing I want to tell you is that none of us are happy with what Trump is doing. Some, like myself, would probably tolerate it if we felt that it was if he was doing to the progressives what they had done to others. For example, accreditation. I've seen accreditation institutions used to target groups, to target schools that violate the political values, not scientific values, political values of people they don't like. If Trump had gone that route and a few other routes, I would be less of a critic of what he's doing. But trying to prevent international students from coming over here, trying to go in and take out DEI programs by fiat, by the government, this goes beyond what was happening before. And I fear that once the right, if you will, loses power and the left has political power, they will imitate Trump's bad habits. Others have talked about, well, what Trump's doing is not legal. I'm not a lawyer. Some of these are lawyers, and they know more about that than I do. But maybe some of what he could do if he went through legal channels. Bottom line is, we who have been critical and sometimes have faced the cost of being critical of academia are not happy with what Trump is doing. It could be done in a way that's more effective and perhaps more fair. So that's the first point that I really want to bring out. Second point, unfortunately, what Trump is doing to some degree is foreseeable. Look, I've seen cases, and I could talk about them, and I won't in this video, but maybe I will in the future, cases of academics who have been targeted because they don't fall in line. I know of academics who have been, if not driven out of academia, have had their status reduced to where they can't really fully do all that they want to do in academia. I've seen that happen. I even know of one famous case of a suicide. So, it's not that there was this pristine institution and then Trump came along and started messing it up. There were problems there. And if academics had dealt with the problems, if we in academia had dealt with the problems beforehand, he would not have gotten the sort of support he's getting right now. One of the things that got Harvard in trouble was anti-Semitism. Looking at it, I'm not on campus there, but looking at it, I believe Harvard placated anti-Semitism. One of the most hypocritical things I heard their president, President Gay, say at the time was how they respected free speech, therefore they had to allow was anti-Semitism. The problem was Harvard had not respected free speech in a long time. If you look at FIRE, which is an organization that is bipartisan and that looks at academic freedom, Harvard tends to rank last or almost last. They know how to go after speech they don't like. So when she said, we can't restrain these people because of anti-Semitism, those of us in the know knew she was lying. So I'm not, once again, not justifying what Trump is doing, but this is foreseeable. If you take a political bias angle and you force it, and you're unfair in the way you represent people from one half the country, eventually they get tired of it. And in some ways, Trump has been their pushback. Okay, third thing. None of us want to go back to where it was. What Trump's doing may be worse than what it was. And I would probably say what Trump is doing now is worse than what it was before. But I don't want to go back to where it was before. I'm hoping that somehow through all of this, we can find solutions, we can find remedies. Maybe those who have been perpetuating the problems on campus, having been at the other end of it, will be more sensitive to the problems today. Thus, I hold on a sliver of hope. And right now I'm speaking for myself, not for other critics. Perhaps they don't feel any hope, and I can understand that. I hold on to a sliver of hope that when it's all said and done, and when the excesses of Trump have been pulled back, that perhaps we come at this in a way of really trying to make academia what it's supposed to be, which is as much as possible, because you can't completely do this, but as much as possible be an objective search for the truth, for information. Maybe we can head towards that without political bias, without religious bias coming into play. Maybe having both sides, if you will, been burnt, and knowing that if you lose power, the other side will burn you, we'll come up with a set of values, a set of reforms that will fix it. This is not unprecedented in history. According to Fitzpatrick, when you looked at Spanish and Moors, who both had slaves, but they developed slave codes because sometimes the Spanish would be the slaves and sometimes they would be the enslavers. So what the Spanish and Moors quickly realized is when we're the slaves, we don't want to be mistreated that badly. So it's possible that this could happen. It's a sliver of hope. I'm realistic. Chances are once Trump and MAGA lose power, progressives will take over again and they'll probably replicate what they did before, or maybe even worse. But I hold up some sliver of hope. And maybe there could be some good coming out of what Trump is doing right now. And once again, I respect anyone who says, no, I don't see anything good coming out of it, because I could have that pessimistic attitude myself. Does this share some paradigms? Paradigm thinking about Trump, of what he's doing. Maybe you liked what he's doing, but now realize that there's some problems because this then can be replicated once conservatives are out of power. Or paradigms of being very critical of Trump, but now realizing that while he is still responsible for what is happening, some of this has been brought on by the actions in academia itself. I hope this creates more nuanced thinking, more thinking of sharing paradigms. If you like this sort of talk, if you'd like to hear about these sort of ideas, perhaps discuss them, please leave a like. This gets it out to more people. Make a comment. If you disagree with me, make a comment. That's fine. I'll get some more information. And please consider subscribing. If you like this sort of conversation, this sort of trying to attack it with nuance, trying to bring my Christian values with my academic training, if you like that, then please subscribe. The more subscribers I have, the more we can reach out to others to really engage in these sort of better conversations. Well, thanks once again. Hope you enjoy it. And come back. We can shatter some more paradigms.